Ciao. Gay Satanism Art Journal, SatanArt number 26. SatanArt is a visual addition to the Grimoire Gay Lust. The album theme is Vladimir Putin is Kaput. The face of Vladimir Putin, the leader of the Kremlin's organized crime group Rashist Pederation, in pictures, cartoons, and photographs. Supplement to the Grimoire Gay Lust. The names of the paintings are in English. The album was compiled by a Satanist of His Majesty Satan, the Antichrist Slut Sodomia. The title of the collection of photographs and artwork, Vladimir Putin Kaput, is a reference to the phrase about Adolf Hitler, that is, another psychopath who dreamed of greatness, national unity, and Nazi supremacy in our world. Now, the Antichrist Slut Sodomia will tell you about the role of VV Putin from a satanic perspective. As many witnesses and commentators have noted, the villain Putin has a pathological fear of death and hell, so Putin knows roughly what awaits him there. In our world, VV Putin has the power to do nasty things and has firmly dug his teeth into the necks of dear Russians, sucking their lifeblood, blood, and money, brainwashing them with propaganda and stupefying them with lies, all under the guise of pseudo-grandeur. From a satanic perspective, the bald freak Putin himself is of little value, but this scoundrel exposes the critters of evil and, for the amusement of the forces of hell, hands over an entire sea, millions of Russians who have succumbed to evil. This is what Putin does in our world. Therefore, Putin is not yet in hell, but he continues to recruit Russians for the amusement of Satan, demons, Antichrists, and Satanists in hell. Don't even think that a Kremlin pimple like Putin can deceive or trick Satan. Of course, Putin is merely Satan's puppet and a means of exposing evil. Please don't call Vladimir Putin a Satanist, the Antichrist, or even Satan. Vladimir Putin is a vile, evil maniac, evil incarnate. Satan is the tamer of evil and the vengeance of evil. The best method of defeating evil and Satanism is for one evil to expose another, and one evil to destroy another. Vladimir Putin is doing this well, which is why this psychopath is not yet in hell, although all the forces of hell are certainly waiting him there for endless torture. In this whole story, it's a little sad that good people are dying. Yes, during the war against evil, innocent and good people perish. The Antichrist is more concerned not for ordinary people, but for Satanists, Satan's immortal messengers into our world. The Antichrist, Slut Sodomia, doesn't want Satanists to suffer from evil. It's important to understand that there are as many villains like Putin in our world as there are state-organized crime groups that have divided the planet into spheres of influence and are milking the blood and money of gullible citizens and subjects.
Vladimir Putin himself is a cowardly little bastard who constantly commits the following nasty acts, both against Russians themselves and against neighboring peoples of planet Earth. 1. Vladimir Putin constantly lies. 2. Vladimir Putin constantly steals, robs, embezzles, and misappropriates. 3. Vladimir Putin constantly engages in Nazism and fascism. 4. Vladimir Putin constantly murders people. 5. Vladimir Putin constantly organizes atrocities. Yes, many journalists, bloggers, political scientists, and analysts of planet Earth have already noted that Vladimir Putin lies the moment he opens his mouth. Vladimir Putin lies constantly on every issue, and he does so in the manner of psychopaths and people with NPD. Certainly, the evil known as Putin is a psychopath, a maniac, and a mentally ill person who has seized control of the grandeur of his hallucinations on a czarist scale. Of course, psychiatrists can provide a more precise diagnosis of the Kremlin ghoul's mania and psychopathic personality disorder, but for the Antichrist, this understanding of the essence of the leader of the Russia criminal group is sufficient. Vladimir Putin constantly inflates the pseudo-greatness of both Russians themselves and the global significance of the Russia criminal group. If we're talking about Russia's so-called greatness, then yes, the savage Russians have seized a vast territory of planet Earth, occupied neighboring indigenous peoples, and now boasted of their occupation of this territory while practicing imperial Nazism. Here, it's important to note an important aspect of the Russian occupation of a vast territory, part of planet Earth. Russians and the SOCG, Russia, have turned this vast territory into a concentration camp, where people are treated like cattle who give birth to cattle like themselves, bred with the genes of alcoholic degenerates and cursed with the curse of androphagic cannibals. Russians and the SOCG Russia have polluted this vast territory with their drunken, soulless cattle, and other peoples are unable to use the Earth's territory rationally and effectively for their own lives. The entire territory of Russia has been reduced to ruins, and only a few large Russian cities, Moscow, St. Petersburg, are more or less pleasant to live in. I emphasize that this has been achieved by plundering and devastating the rest of the so-called Russia. Russians and the SOCG Russia use their vast territory to wreak havoc on neighboring peoples, tribes, and civilizations. This is what the SOCG Russia has always done, from the time of the Tatar Mongol raids, the Golden Horde, the Tsars, and the Soviet concentration camps of the USSR. Russians and the SOCG Russia commit atrocities not only against neighboring peoples, but also against their own compatriots. Within the so-called Russia, Russians devour each other like cannibalistic bedbugs. The most prominent Russian cannibalistic bugs sit in the Kremlin, the Russian Duma, and the Russian government, while all the other Russians contribute their blood, money, or slave labor for pennies. Russians and the SOCG Russia have entered into a symbiotic relationship and a mode of cultivating evil ideas, where people engage in evil together in a patriotic fervor of their pseudo-greatness and the traditional values of Russian evil. LGBT people and Satanists have been equated with criminals and enemies of society, while war criminals are glorified in schools, kindergartens, and at racist said rallies. War criminals, murderers, and sadists teach patriotism and spirituality to the young Russians in various educational institutions of the so-called Russia. Putinism deploys vicious Z propaganda in all available media, especially through the televisions of Russian scum.
Russia's example shows that the Kremlin's evildoers fear Satan, Satanism, and the forces of hell. Now, in 2025, gays, Satanists, and witches are banned in Russia. The following are officially banned and considered extremists, i.e., criminals. 1. The international LGBT social movement has been banned by the Russian criminals of the Rashist Pederation crime group. 2. The international Satanism movement has been banned by the Russian criminals of the Rashist Pederation crime group. 3. The Kremlin sect of the Russian Orthodox Church has declared war on the Antichrist, as the sect's leader, Patriarch Kirill Vladimir Gunjayev, has stated many times. The Antichrist, Satan, and all the forces of hell are the main enemies of the Russian androphasic degenerates. This is not surprising, because Satan embodies splendor, delight, development, science, and the highest form of consciousness. ROC sect embodies degradation, herd mentality, stupidity, dogma, and the worship of evil. In the next part of the introduction, the Antichrist Slut Sodomia will tell the reader about the astonishing discovery of his letter symbols on the insignia of Putin's army, which invaded Ukraine in 2022. I don't know which of the Rashist leaders came up with the idea of using the Latin letters Z and V as identification marks, but Putler certainly approved. It's possible that Putler, the bald-faced leader of the Rashists, himself came up with the idea of using the Antichrist symbols to mark his orcs. Of course, the Antichrist is completely opposed to the Rashists. He gave them no advice on how to apply his symbols to their banners, uniforms, or equipment. That's logical. I don't know for sure who cast such black magic on the Rashists. I can imagine that it was directly cast by Satan. This is my assumption, and I'm not sure of it, because black magic created by Satan isn't like a sign on a store counter with a precise attribution of the price and product name. It lacks such precision or certainty. However, the imposition of the Antichrist signs in the form of black magic on the cursed evil of racism worked remarkably well. Antichrist Slut Sodomia dedicates SatanArt number 26 to the fight against Russian evil, which has occupied a significant portion of planet Earth and is engaged in furthering its evil, degrading the territory and population in the occupied territories. Russia's area comprises approximately 11 or 13% of the planet's total land area, and this territory has been seized by imbeciles and degenerates, led by the Moscow Kremlin Tsar presidents. Currently, the leader of the Rashist Pederation criminal group is Vladimir Putin, who continues the work of both the Tsars and the Soviet security officers. I dedicate SatanArt number 26 to the face of Vladimir Putin. Look at Putin's face and marvel at how this Putin face was able to dumb down millions of Russians, destroy the economy and people's lives, rob all Russians, implant delusions of self-importance in their minds out of thin air, and turns empty-headed people against Satan, satanic spirituality, and the LGBTQ+ community. Let Putin's face, illustrated by SatanArt number 26 and commented on by the Antichrist Slut Sodomia, be a reminder of who Vladimir Putin is and how easily a single psychopath with NPD can orchestrate a mass military imperial psychosis among millions of unilluminated people. Russians don't resist evil, Russians rejected satanic spirituality, and Putin exposed millions of Russian degenerates. This is good for Satanism and the forces of hell.
In the name of Satan, Lucifer, the Most High.